Hey everyone, welcome back to the PGA Players Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Goldberg. Today we have a great guest for our conversation, Brendan von Doehren. Brendan is a vice president at the PGA Tour and executive director of PGA Tour University. He's also a former college player and college coach, which gives him some great perspective for his current role. Brendan, welcome. Thanks for being here. I'm excited to have you back and have a conversation about the evolution of PGA Tour U.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks for having me on, and I look forward to the conversation.
Great. Let's start at the beginning. It's pretty crazy to think. It's been 5 years. How did PGA Tour U come to exist? Give us a little background there.
Yeah, awesome. It is kind of crazy how time flies, but I would sort of go back to kind of the ideation for me came through a lot of the past experiences as you sort of referenced in the game, both playing and coaching, as well as just kind of other experience in professional leagues and, a yearning for historical learnings from other sports. I think early on, a lot of the drive for me with PGA Tour U was just kind of a passion. I would say a healthy obsession and kind of a purpose for really envisioning something you hope is successful. But it really was kind of an accumulation of thought. I can't really pinpoint a time exactly when, the light bulb moment sort of came on with PGA Tour U. But really, I think, at a fundamental level, the approach on really the initiative was how do we think differently and kind of modernize the PGA Tour's connection to college golf, which I would sort of define and categorize as sort of two separate organizations, for over 6 decades that had an informal relationship up until PGA Tour U. So, the goal for us was and sort of is still now to kind of create obviously a really powerful preeminent property in the sport within this space that will stand the test of time and the evolution, 5 years ago when we launched and now to sort of looking forward into the game. So that was kind of the impetus of PGA Tour U kind of in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And you brought something up that I think is great to touch on. You mentioned experience in other sports. And one thing we've talked about in the past, other sports have a draft. College players play well, they kind of showcase their talents. And then those leagues have teams and they're drafting players into either directly into their league, like the NFL and the NBA. NBA has the D League, of course. Baseball is a little different. They're drafting, but then kind of going through the development process in the minor leagues. Maybe touch on that a little bit on how you use that experience and maybe use that as a model for building this out.
Yeah, I think we, early on, we took a wide kind of cross section of the leagues, NFL, NBA, and the drafts. And I think, ours is kind of an accumulation, a lot of the drafts, sort of scouting and free agency, right? And how you sort of create that pipeline. But for us, it was really kind of a meritocratic draft, so to speak, where everything is objective. It's through, performance on the golf course. But it was something that, we wanted to create kind of a proprietary tool, right? And a ranking that we own, we operate. We sort of feel, is a great identifier of talent and really use that kind of as a springboard for, how players really matriculate to our tours from the PGA Tour, Korn Ferry Tour, and PGA Tour Americas.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, you touch on it being a meritocracy, and golf's the ultimate sport where the numbers are what matter. You can look like a great player, you can have a beautiful swing, you have a great putting stroke, but it's really all that matters is what the number is at the end of the day and what your score is, where you finish. One of the things we talk about a lot here is, how do players create, capture, and convert their talents into value? And I think this is, a good way of explaining for a college player looking at, hey, their results are going to be their results. They need to work on their game back home and with their coaches, and they're going to have their results. But the PGA Tour has developed this program where now they can capture some of that talent and move on directly on to some of these tours and have a clear pathway to the PGA Tour where, not to age myself or you, but back when in our days, you finish college and you really have the whole summer to figure out what you were going to do. And then you went to Q school. And that was really all there was. There wasn't a pathway. So I think it's really interesting to see how the clear paths that are set forth all the way down to what is it, 25th on the rankings has some sort of status at this point.
Correct. Yeah, we've expanded our benefits in the 5 years from the first initial class of 2021 with 15 players now to, top 25 players and expansion. And I want to kind of to pivot on one of the points you said there. In addition to the ranking, I think one of the powerful aspects we really kind of a word that defines PGA Tour U, we hope, as we go forward and you think about players, is really being an aspirational lane and a pathway for that top talent, right? We think about players from all around the world, the different growth development stages, players in international federations. You got AJGA, you come to college, you transition to professional golf, right? We want sort of that sense of those players see the players that have come before them, sort of the alumni, the player product, and aspire to be them. And I think for us in the 5 years, we've seen the physical sense of that. When that sort of becomes powerful, it becomes a phenomenon that sort of yields itself, and something that we keep kind of close to our heart and in our minds of how we're kind of architecting moving forward.
Yeah, it's a great point. I remember, back when I was playing there, a lot of the universities and teams had international players, but I feel like it was maybe the A-, B+ players that were coming over to play, but those A-level players were staying over in Europe, maybe practicing with their national team, and then finding a pathway to turn pro on the European tour or trying to find their way over to the PGA Tour eventually. Now it seems like the best international players are coming to college to be able to get into this type of program or at least get exposure to the program.
Yeah, and we, across our alumni thus far, roughly 40% of the players that have earned performance benefits in PGA Tour U have been international. So, I mean, that just kind of speaks to, once again, the migration to the collegiate game, which I think is really that most premier proving ground and player development ground of, the resources and everything at the disposal of these top universities is really that attraction point. And then I think you layer on now the direct pathways of PGA Tour U. It makes all the sense to continue to stay in school, continue to reap the benefits, and have that transition to pro golf.
Yeah, you talk about staying in school and have the benefits. I mean, looking at some of the facilities around the country, I'd want to stay in school for about 8 years at this point. PGA Tour is very enticing, but man, some of these facilities look great. So add on coaches handling a lot of the logistics and maybe a scholarship, I'd be a Van Wilder for a while and stay in school. So that's great. Maybe touch on where we're at now in terms of what the benefits are going from number 1 all the way down to 25. What does that look like both for the year that they graduate and beyond?
Yeah, and I would sort of say, just to kind of drill into that a little bit where we're at today, I think, I think positively have really restructured this transition process when we think about kind of positively influencing the player decision-making process. And the why, the when, and the how you turn pro now, I think, is way more structured than when you and I were. And I think we're seeing the positive effects really in, the byproduct of that, of more seasoned, mature, competitively proven players that are hitting the ground running in the fields, having the successes. But right now, to answer your question, so the top 25 players annually on the final PGA Tour U ranking following the NCAA National Championship stroke play portion earn membership benefits onto one of our tours. Starting at the top with the number 1 player to the PGA Tour the following week, and they're exempt for the current season plus the following season, so essentially roughly kind of a year and a half on the PGA Tour. Players 2 to 10 are exempt the following week onto the Korn Ferry Tour. That's been an expansion of benefits this last class of 2025 for the current season, and then they have a little bit of a play-in category amongst themselves for the following year's access on the Korn Ferry Tour. So again, really kind of strengthen benefits for that top 2 to 10 tier. And then players 11 to 25 right after the NCAA National Championship to PGA Tour Americas for the current season as well as the following season. So when you look on aggregate, again, it's really a nice chunk of players that we've been able to gradually strengthen the benefits, from that first class, as I said, which were top 5 to the Korn Ferry Tour and only 15 total players. We've seen really that rapid growth kind of right out of the infancy of the program.
That's great. I mean, to see the 25 players get some sort of access, and I think I don't want to say burying the lead, but what's not talked about enough is having a year and a half as opposed to just the rest of the season. What I've noticed with whether it be working directly with players or just watching the players that graduate and move on and kind of tracking their progress, that first season, you're kind of thrown right into the fire in the middle of summer, and it's fantastic. It gets your feet wet and you get ready to go, but it's an uphill battle and it is difficult. And I think we've seen it in a lot of the results that it's a good way for the players to get acclimated to pro golf. And then we've seen, you probably have the data behind this, but it seems like we've seen a ton of success in the year, 0.5 to 1.5. Their second true year as a pro, they have full year to plan out, really get acclimated and ready to go in the off season, and they hit the ground running in that second year. It seems like we've seen a lot of success there.
Yeah, I think you hit on really two success drivers we've been able to really kind of identify to set this up is really the immediacy and the cadence of events guys get in right away. So that is the week following NCAA, you are transitioning immediately into our properties for that season. And then the second aspect is really that length of membership, that length of time, which you hit on, right? It's the balance of those two that I think has been really kind of optimized the performances that we've seen, whether it be the immediacy on some, players winning right out of the gate, to the following year, you got your feet under you and you're really able to kind of, maximize everything.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, I think the immediacy gets lost on players sometimes too, because they're so focused on, rightfully so, on conference, regionals, nationals, and then all of a sudden, they make match play as a team. They're usually at the NCAA championship till Wednesday or Thursday. Yep. And then a lot of them are playing US Open sectional the next Monday. They're playing 36. And then, oh yeah, by the way, you're playing either on the PGA Tour or in the Korn Ferry Tour about that week. And it happens fast. And so a lot of things, what we've talked to players about is, hey, getting your ducks in a row back in December, January, so that you're not thinking about any logistics when it comes there. You don't know what tour you're going to be on. Hopefully you're finishing number 1 and on the PGA Tour or in that 2 to 10 category and going to the Korn Ferry Tour, but you're probably going somewhere. And so making sure that logistically you're ready to go, man, all the training wheels fall off the day you turn pro, and that you want to have a good team behind you. But coach is a big supporter at that point, but he's not booking flights or telling you where and when to be anywhere. That's for sure.
No, it's definitely a new life. We've gotten feedback from players, and you got to kind of go through it yourself, and you got to learn to adapt and adjust, and what works for you, and new courses, and all those sort of variable elements that are so predictable in college when you play a schedule for 4 years in a row in the same courses. So it's been kind of fun to see guys navigate that. But second to the top 25, if I'll just kind of layer on, is PGA Tour U Accelerated. Just want to touch on that real quick. So Accelerated was launched in 2023 for really underclassmen. Kind of, you think back to really the outliers of achievement, kind of rare talents and time that kind of stacked up. And really it's an intuitive points table for us across performance in professional, amateur, and college golf. Online you can take a look at all of it, but world rank and winning events, etc. Once you reach 20 points, you earn a PGA Tour membership. 3 players thus far have achieved that: Gordon Sargent, Luke Clanton, and Jackson Quaven most recently. At the beginning of this year, in January 2025, we modified kind of the points table just a little bit. I think it gave us a chance to pause in time, and 3 players kind of earned it very different ways and avenues. But a chance to look at the data, the trends, the analysis, the paths of players, to ensure, again, when you achieve something like this, your body, of work is very wide, right, in achievements to attain this. So I think we're in a good spot with that. We'll continue, like everything, whether it be the ranking or the accelerated table, to make adjustments and stay nimble as we move forward. But again, accelerated as well as PGA Tour U, now for us, whether you're a freshman or a senior, across the way, you're playing for something. You have a lane, you have a path for exceptional talent to the PGA Tour.
Yeah, no, you speak to a good point. I do want to come back to those 3 players in particular and kind of their paths. But one thing you said about being nimble and adapting, looking at the data and being able to adapt the system, this isn't meant to be a fluff piece, but credit to you guys in being nimble and being willing to adapt as you go, as opposed to not just the PGA Tour, but I think pro sports in general being very stuck in like, hey, this is the system we set up, we're going to stick with it. And not only have the benefits expanded, but I think as you've looked at how the rankings have gone and the players have gone through it, hey, how can we continue to make this better and get the right players moving up quicker? And it's been fantastic to see. So not really a question, but just a thank you for, as a fan of college golf and as a pro golf and watching really, again, being entrenched with some of the best players in the world, wanting to see the best players in the world get out on the PGA Tour faster.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And we're not experts in everything, right? We're here to listen and learn and kind of evolve as, again, things change in players and their decision making. Like, this is kind of a live kind of aspect of PGA Tour U that we're proud of.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to see how young the best players in the world have gotten.
Yes.
Again, I'm not trying to base this on myself or you, but even just 10 years ago, like 40 to 45 was a prime of your career. And now when I talk to, I had a conversation with a player, this was going back a couple months, but his comment was, hey, if I get to play past 40, that's kind of gravy on top of everything else. And this is one of the best players in the world thinking this. Like, it is a different tour now. And to see Ludwig come out and win in his first year, some of these other players win under 23, Nick Dunlap winning as an amateur, Luke Clayton going out and doing what he's done, Jackson Coyven currently doing what he's doing still in college. It's pretty impressive to see, and it's almost like that glass ceiling got broken, and the amateurs, the college players, and even just the first year players, they have no fear. Like, hey,
yeah,
somebody else won, I can go do it. Why can't I? And it's really neat to see how is the reception of the PGA Tour U program and how quickly players are moving up and received by, let's say, not necessarily the older PGA Tour players, but the veteran PGA Tour players out there.
Yeah, I think, a couple of aspects of that. I think number one, sort of we've, stayed really connected with our alumni, now 103 players that are, somewhere in the world of professional golf. And I think now 5 years in, we've been able to see some more proof points on things, performance of players, right? That and this is sort of a bottom line business. And what are they achieving? And how are they, out there engaging with, other pros as sort of younger on tour? And I think, acceptance, I would say, across the board for the most part amongst, the membership bases. And that's something that we're, continue to monitor and stay aware of. And more than anything, I think, as you mentioned, like some of these top young guys that are really pushing the envelope historically at achievements, whether it be Coyven or whether it be Clan. I mean, within the last couple clips here, we're seeing things in the time of golf that has stood up, and then that transition to what they're doing in pro golf. I think that really has gained, the acceptance and the believability that PGA Tour U kind of as a property, as an engine, as an asset, as a competitive advantage for the PGA Tour. This is something that looking forward is a modernized aspect of the game. And, so we're, but it definitely helps when you think of 103 alumni, there's going to be 200 alumni, right, as we move forward. And it's just a bit of a numbers game as we think of, sort of the players matriculating to the tour.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I know nobody wants to feel like their spot's getting taken, but at the same time, there's not a whole lot of argument when scores are what do the talking and everyone has their opportunity. And, I hate the phrase play better, but it's true. Sometimes, at some point, you have to play. If you have status and you're out there playing, you have the opportunity to stay out there. And these young kids, they want to get out there too. It's probably one of the hardest, if not the hardest professional sport to play at the highest level because there's just such limited access. And, this year there's gonna be 100 PGA Tour cards. So that's a very small number for how many people play golf in this world.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Speaking to, again, going back to that accelerated program.
Sure.
We saw, was Gordon Sargent the first one to get the
Gordon earned
promotion?
Accelerated. Yes, Gordon earned accelerated first, deferred his to stay at Vandy for 4 years, came out this past June. Luke obviously kind of, earned it his junior year this past year at Florida State. And then Jackson secured his at NCAA National Championship and had the option to immediately, again, sort of elect to turn professional, has returned to Auburn, for his junior year here. We'll see how it goes. But those are the three players that have really kind of achieved it in different ways, different paths. Not every path is the right one. I think a lot of it depends on timing and obviously performance. But Gordon, and kind of Jackson a lot through the points table and, world rank, winning amateur events, etc. Luke's was obviously a little bit different. He kind of lit the world on fire from a PGA Tour perspective last year, accumulated a lot of points and really kind of was pedaling downhill, it seemed like, all summer long and got to it at Cognizant Classic. So, going back to what I said, it's just something that we'll continue to study and ensure that the totality really of all the achievements, warrants a PGA Tour card.
Yeah, no, what I'm impressed with is that that incorporates some of the more summer amateur, like the bigger world amateur events and some of the rankings where I know the PGA Tour University system, the main one, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe for the most part excludes those that we're talking about just for the most part, just college season and college events very intentionally.
Correct. Yeah. PGA Tour U is Division I events as well as PGA Tour events. And then, accelerated is a wider arc of, given it's kind of could be a shorter sample size given the age of players, it sort of widens out a 12-month calendar for performance evaluation.
Great. Yeah, I don't think anybody can argue against the 3 players that have gotten or achieved the promotion at this point. And like you said, in varying ways, but it's not, the bar is set plenty high where it's not like, hey, too many guys are getting this. So that seems really good. Going back to what we were talking about with the current player, current membership acceptance of this, there's been a lot of talk about new PGA Tour leadership. And for the better, or I shouldn't say for the better, I'm going to stay agnostic on it. I'm going to ask the question instead. How has the new leadership handled and discussed the PGA Tour University program with you? What's their support of it, and how do they envision it supporting the PGA Tour and as a pathway?
Yeah, good question. And Brian Rolap, our new CEO at the PGA Tour, and I think just in general, our leadership group through these 5 years and more immediately, with Brian, I think seeing really the importance of player development, talent regeneration across our tours, really the significance for us as a business in producing future stars, and really the long-term value that these stars like a Ludwig can create for the enterprise. And so I think specifically, for college golf, I think there's interest to further entrenching ourselves within the fabric of college golf and the game, strengthening our brand even more than we have. And I think, we talked about it early on, but look no further at really the parallel and comp to other professional sports and, how they've smartly kind of built these symbiotic relationships with college sports and reap the benefits of the development system and the resources. And so I think, again, 5 years in and the leadership team, and all that is, how do we continue to leverage that harder for our entire enterprise across all our tours? So, I think there's definitely support and look forward to continuing to, evolve our brand, evolve our reach within the college game.
Great. No, it's good to hear, I think of it as from a business perspective, and no large corporation is not thinking about either research and development or what's their next, what does their next 5 years look like? How do we develop as a company? And this seems like the natural evolution for the PGA Tour of their R&D or their investment into their future, as opposed to, hey, these players are good, they're going to figure out a way on the PGA Tour, and then it's every man for themselves, which is kind of true, but at the same time, thinking as a business going forward and this new enterprise, how do we elevate that? And how does the PGA Tour elevate that? Giving the best players the opportunity to get out there. They're not given anything, they're earning it. So it's really neat to see, and they have a lot of resources behind them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we're looking forward to kind of, again, what the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years holds.
Yeah. What do you think, this is probably speculation, but let's even stick with the next 5 years. How does that play out? What would you like to see? What do you think could happen?
Yeah, I think it's really more from a macro perspective, like how do we continue to advance the life cycle of the property? The first 5 years, I would categorize as rapid growth, just out of the gates, performance benefits, us as a brand, like the market to understand you. We got to advance past that early life cycle into kind of more mature, growth. And for us, I think it's continuing to build the property, new auxiliary properties, potentially underneath the PGA Tour U umbrella to grow the brand, beyond the competitive aspect of PGA Tour U. I think one specific focus for us, which we have not embarked on, is really kind of the events side of college golf. How do we kind of formalize relationships with some of the top existing events in the country that have, been the fabric of college golf for 25 years and at elevated courses with brands. How do we provide kind of support resources to those events to, elevate the preparatory environment even more? And, the Jackson Coivens and the other top elite players at these events, how are we kind of having a better touch point with those from an event basis? And then, second to that, I think within the event space one day, potentially have our own and operated event, where we, again, kind of control aspects of it and, the media and, the monetization of it, just everything as a whole, like that makes a lot of sense for us. We got to figure out the timing to be right. And, you got kind of one opportunity to get out of the gates with that. So we want to make sure it's done the way we want. But really, I think to answer your question, like the life cycle is going to evolve beyond just the performance benefits, and kind of transcend more to a business property for us, for the enterprise.
Yeah, that sounds great. I could see, having PGA Tour U majors or something like that are involved in college golf, whether it be the existing events, something you all create, but having added value there, both from a development standpoint, a business standpoint, where you are creating a profitable business entity or adding to the profitable business entity. And also maybe it's, it's adding to the points and adding to the access to the tour for the players.
Absolutely. We're kind of excited. We're, moving in that direction and kind of more to come on a lot of that. But yeah, if I thought where we'd be in the first 5 years, I didn't think we'd be here. I didn't know where we'd be, but be kind of even more exciting at the 10-year anniversary.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see, and I hope we have that conversation at the 10-year anniversary. How is I know in the beginning, coaches were very accepting of PGA Tour U, but didn't maybe have, same thing as like thrown into the fire. We're not quite sure exactly what's going on. What's their feedback been, I guess, over the last 5 years and where it's at now?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, within the 5 years in our program changes, whether it be the benefits or our point system adjustments, without getting into the weeds. Like, I think we've done a good job in a sense of understanding the uniqueness of college golf is there's the individual aspect, there's the team aspect, right? That kind of coexist at the same time, whether it be at the NCAA National Championship or regular events. And so, we've been mindful and cognizant that those dynamics are in play. We've got, a ranking now that provides access that wasn't there 6 years ago. That's kind of determining a lot of decisions for players. But I think, an interesting aspect we've seen is now we've got the 103 alumni that have represented a lot of these universities. This is a powerful recruiting tool for coaches, and sort of how many alumni have you produced and where are they at now? And I think we want to kind of build on that, but that's taken a life of its own when you think of a lot of these top schools, and from our early classes, the Davis Thompsons, the Eckroats, the Kevin Hughes, though Jacob Bridgmans, Joe Highsmiths, like now they're 3, 4, 5 years into their career, their connection to their universities and kind of how they speak about PGA Tour U. It's bringing kind of a life of its own from both the college coach perspective as well as current players.
Great. Yeah. I think it's in talking to other coaches and hearing their take, it seems it's an opportunity for them to capitalize on, and you accept that. And it's, hey, we're going to be one of the best teams in the country. We want to get the best players in the country, and we want to showcase that they can get to the next level as well. Young juniors, when they're looking at colleges to go to, they want to see if they can get to the PGA Tour. And no better way to look at it than this. So that's really interesting. It's funny you mentioned that some of those names that, you think of them as like veteran PGA Tour players now, and you forget that they even went through the PGA Tour U. And it's exciting to see, like, it's been around that long now that those are players that are out on the PGA Tour, they're winning and kind of established themselves. And it's not just that hot young player that just got out. You're 5 years in.
Yeah, we're 5 years for those. And I think just, more recent kind of shining examples, and he's about ready, to change to the PGA Tour now, but Johnny Kiefer coming out of Baylor, was our 25th player in 2024 and, kind of hit, the ground running on America's number one out there, now number one on our points list. And Michael Brennan is kind of on the same trajectory, just got 3-win promotion and be on Korn Ferry Tour next year. So, regardless, we're seeing sort of where you're at in the ranking to some aspects, all these are such proven players that really just kind of need to get in that good rhythm, have the opportunity. And, we're seeing the success of these guys and see where they're at, in kind of 5 years down the line.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up Johnny Kiefer. I remember sitting there at the last day of stroke play at La Costa. I just happened to live right by it and was sitting there and saw Johnny, and he was sweating it out on, hey, am I going to finish 25th, 24th, 26th, have zero status, have status? And, he played well and earned that 25th spot and then took full advantage of it, obviously, and really has not looked back since. So it's great to see. And that it's a testament to what the platform that they have as they get it in as a pro golfer.
Yeah, absolutely. No, those two kind of names, most recently, and excited to see how Johnny does on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, I think his game's going to translate.
I do too.
It'll be fun to see. One question that I wanted to circle back to that I think I don't have clarity on. You mentioned the 2 through 10 get the Korn Ferry Tour status for this year, and then is it next year as well, or you said there's like a points race in between them?
Yeah, so we'll get into the weeds a little bit. So basically, players from each class, so 2 to 25, are in a mini playing category, a PGA Tour U category, where we take the combined points of PGA Tour FedEx Cup points, as well as Korn Ferry Tour points, equally weighted 1-to-1. We total those at the end after RSM Classic, and the top 5 players in that total PGA Tour U points category earn membership onto the Korn Ferry Tour the following year. So that's sort of that little mini where, we capture and again, sort of re-identify the best of that group versus 2 to 10, or 2 to 7 automatically the following year. It allows for an opportunity if a player from PGA Tour Americas Monday qualifies into PGA Tour event or a Korn Ferry Tour event and, gets on a roll and top 25s or top 10s, right, and accumulates points. Like, we sort of want to capture that player, and rightfully so. He's, played maybe better than the rest. And so that's sort of a PGA Tour U total points category that you can find online that we keep updated every week with the combined points.
Great. Okay. Speaking of online, if people have more questions, I'll put the link in the show notes to the website. Is that the best place for them to go, is the website? And it seems like there's a lot of information there these days.
Yeah, we've got all information. We've got kind of storylines. We've got our, rules and regs if you're players. We've got our ranking updates every Wednesday that come out kind of around noon Eastern time through the cadence of the fall and the spring college season. So check those out both on social, and then you'll see the long form ranking on our .com page.
Great. All right. Well, Brendan, this has been great. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing the updates and kind of the backstory of PGA Tour University and where we're at now. I think this has been a great conversation for myself, but for everybody else that's going to be listening. So looking forward to seeing you out there. Looking forward to having this next conversation, maybe at the 10-year anniversary. But appreciate your time and everything you do for college golf and the aspiring pros on the pathway up.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And let's do this for 10 years.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks, everyone.
This has been a production from AWM Capital, the Athlete Family Office. Reach out to the team at athletefamilyoffice.com or by calling or texting 626-460-9278.